Hey there, Alix Sabatelli Rager here. Welcome to Sweet Spot Power and to this podcast or video cast called Love and Waves. I am so excited to be bringing this incredible woman to you. She's one of my absolute favorite teachers. Her name is Sarahelkhaldy. She's known as the Alchemist, and she's a spiritual teacher and mystic, and she talks all things about awakening and about this universe and how things work in the spiritual realms. And I will just let you know, we dive deep in this interview, and I am breaking it down into other pieces to share even some of my own thoughts and teachings around why I wanted to ask these particular questions. And so make sure you subscribe because those pieces will be coming out, but this is the entire interview here. So without further ado, please enjoy this interview again with the alchemist, Sarah, and myself diving into some of the more esoteric realms, but definitely all around the things that I teach here, all around bringing us from a separation consciousness into unity in this time of awakening that we are in, an incredible time. So enjoy this interview, and I will see you on the other side. Sarah, you've got thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers now. It's like so much more even than last year. Congratulations and welcome to this call.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you must be feeling pretty darn good. What have you been up to these days? Just real quick, I wanted to get to this in the end, but what are some of the things that you're doing these days, and how did you get to stepping into this dharma that you're, this purpose work that you're doing now?
So now that I look back at my early 20s, they were very crucial to just my whole journey, especially in this moment now with my career. And that's because I was going through at that time a really deep um, level of initiation, we could call it that, where I was having tension and contention with people
Mm,
with all of the knowledge I was learning at that time and
mhm,
all of the different really esoteric and fringe experiences that I was interacting with. And
mhm,
so because of that, it was kind of this really crucial choice point where it was like, look, you're either going to just take a really crazy path that at the moment is not clear at all. It looks like bramble bush. It looks like thorns everywhere. You're just going to be the crazy chick. Um, or, you just do what everyone else is doing and play Simon Says, meaning that, oh, once people around you and your environment feel comfortable enough,
mm,
then you go and you take a step further. Now, I was never around and I never put myself in situations where I was so different from
mhm,
the people around me. I mean, like growing up, yeah, like high school, because high school is weird. But I mean, like around the time that I started really stepping into this level of initiation about just saying crazy things.
mhm,
Um, but still, when you're putting yourself out there on social media, and you're not wearing some sort of facade. People
mhm,
know you and they grew up with you or whatever it is. Then it's really uncomfortable and weird
mhm.
because you're not only triggering deeply people's programming, but also there's this like, well, how do you know that? Who are you to say this? It's just asking for it.
Yep.
It's asking for it. And that helped me a lot because now I say whatever I want
Mhm.
and I don't even think twice. It's so second nature to me, but yet the consistent feedback that I get from my following is, oh my God, please keep speaking the way you speak. And
Mhm.
they tell me how they're in
Yeah.
some form of the spiritual closet,
Yeah.
how they can't. And so they're seeing me do that. And I'm laughing, going like, if only you knew, like in my early 20s,
Yeah.
I got it all out of the way. I could say whatever I want now. It could sound crazy and people could get off the train, they could stay on the train, but
Right.
I'm not worried. Like I could literally, it's nothing. My heart rate doesn't, like
Yep.
so it's really about just doing the thing bold and making a really strong choice to just be weird.
Yeah.
And that's something that everyone has to personally face. And that's something that I tend to work with either clients or just my audience
Mhm.
with that's one of the most actually.
Yeah.
things that is crucial for a person's spiritual awakening that I find I come into all the time.
Yep. Yep. Well, and that's how I came to work with you. So, I'd been on my own spiritual journey really since the early 2000s is when I started working with people. And I really found the common thread, the purpose deep within was always to help people to come into an alignment, whether it was working with the body, with the mind, or certainly anything and in any level to bring them into an alignment. I call it sweet spot and the power that's found there. And I got stuck and I got scared finding my voice, just like you're saying. And I got myself to a point where I was like, what am I doing? How did I get in this position? And I started working with you just a couple of sessions and you're like, yeah, we removed a doom imprint. and that and around the throat chakra. And then I was initiated into a crazy last stage initiation into an awakening journey that really just pushed me over over the distance, over the line to where now I feel like, okay, now I'm in. Now I'm not as afraid. And suddenly my channel, I'm talking about spiritual awakening and all these things and coming into alignment and unity. And that's what I really want to talk about here today, because there's so much esoteric stuff that people can learn. And definitely go to The Alchemist on YouTube and make sure you subscribe if you aren't. Incredible content there. And I want to bring this into a focus, if you would, as to like what's really happening right now. You've talked about 3 stages of awakening or different waves or something, right? So there's people in different places and 3 types of people in the matrix right now. Can you touch on that a little bit and kind of where are we meant to focus right now?
Yeah, so it really depends on what phase of consciousness a person is in. My audience is such a diverse frequency. So that's why a lot of times when I'm speaking, it's hitting people at different levels.
Mhm.
So sometimes I have to keep things not vague, but sometimes I have to word things in a specific way that
Mhm.
might not be the most detailed to one person, but yet will everyone, a broad spectrum, can take what they will from it.
Mhm. And come
And
back to
so,
it, right? Yeah.
yeah. And so because of that, it really depends on where a person's at in their own, journey.
Mhm.
But what I do notice typically is that inner work is because I embody a specific frequency.
Mhm.
It is just natural that people who are drawn to my work it's either, if they're not doing inner work,
Mhm.
it's either the wake up call for them to,
Mhm.
or it's something that they just needed more guidance on because they're like, yeah, I get some of these parts, but I don't get how it fits into ascension. And I don't get how the ancient fits into this age. And I don't get how they
Right.
all fit together. So I'm kind of there to explain the more metaphysical, fringe, esoteric aspects of healing, of inner work, of these different phases.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's what's been so helpful. I binged your content so we have the same personality type, which is a rarer one, the INFJ. And when I find interest in something, I go all in. I need to understand it upside down, inside out, in every direction, and put the pieces together. It's like a 5-layer jigsaw puzzle of how the universe works. And I need to would you agree that that's kind of how the mind seems to work with us?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's a bunch of like synthesizing,
Yes.
organizing.
Putting it all together. And then
Yeah.
I'll get a piece and I just go, oh my gosh. And then I get online or I do whatever. And people are like, what? I can't track with you. I can't follow that. And I'm just like, oh, I got to get better at that. So finding you was not only a permission slip for me to go ahead and speak this way, but also to put some more of those little pieces together. And one of the questions I have about that, while I find it really important in terms of the stages of awakening to have these concepts and understand the underbelly, um, is it necessary for all to go there, or can they, in a sense, just jump into just being caring and loving and not, need to understand all these concepts?
Being truly, like genuinely caring and loving
Mhm.
would accidentally mean that you were already on a spiritual awakening path. Because if you were caring and loving
Mhm.
and you had no real awareness of self, of reality, of consciousness, then you would tap out at some sort of shadow form of caring and loving.
Okay.
You mean well,
Hmm.
but the human race, we're programmed at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're programmable. Because we're programmable, we just have this one thing that we could truly call human. And that's this inclination towards empathy. And I used to think that it was like, no, it's a core feature of being human.
Mm.
It, minus psychopathy. But aside from psychopathy, to be human, for a very long time, I've just only recently changed my stance on that. I have believed that it's like a core feature, like empathy. Well, now it's more like the inclination towards empathy is what the human consciousness has. And
Okay.
so because of that, if a person is empathic, that's great, but that's kind of like the human baseline. It's kind of like if you do bare minimum and you want somebody to like applaud you, it's not, it doesn't. So to be truly caring and loving, you'd almost need to be aware. Does this make sense?
It does to me, yes, in the sense that you need to see the other as you, not to judge. See, the way I'm kind of hearing it is, well, you must feel this way would be like almost like a false and empathy. Like I'm still judging how I think that that person might feel versus actually seeing the oneness and feeling the unity in it and caring because they are you in a sense, an extension. They're part of the same cosmic soup. That's kind of how I see care. You know, it's like
Yeah,
it's a positive expression of the all being the all rather than going against it, which is just really our only choice in the moment is to go with the spirit or to go against it, to go with love or with fear. That isn't that at the end of the day what care is to go with the love. But
absolutely. And it's funny because that sounds almost like it can appear at a certain angle kind of elitist, kind of like spiritual superiority.
can sound that way.
But to me, being being spiritual isn't kind of like this like, look, we're on earth and there's this platter and you can choose this from the sample platter, or you could choose this, or you could choose that. I don't see spirituality as being one of those options and then saying it's the superior route. I see it as the fundamental nature of reality. I see it as truth.
Yes. Yes.
Because of that,
Yes.
I don't find it possible for a person to embody evolution and not have it be a being that's spiritual. So that, I mean,
Yeah,
that's a question that wasn't asked, but it was kind of
I
like
understand that.
parallel to that.
No, I get that. And I do want to talk about bypassing because yeah, you can just talk the talk and just be like, yeah, it's as simple. And I appreciate that you say that too. Like that sounds almost elitist or something, or like, oh, overly spiritual. And it's not a matter of talking down when you're there, but that's also when you're there. And it's not, I don't mean like there, like there's a final spot, destination.
Right. I get what you
But
mean.
I just mean coming from an authentic space of I understand this without going into all the concepts. But in a sense, you're right. It's like you have to go through the bridges, you have to go up the staircase, and and that's a lot of what I really try to focus on is how do we just get up the staircase, these levels of consciousness from the third dimension into the fifth or throughout the fourth and the hell realms into this more unity way of seeing the world and everything. And that's what I want to talk about too, because it seems like in the old times, or I say old times, enlightenment was about sitting on a mountain, staring at your navel and just tuning out and not, and just denying the body and the mind. But then you have to come back down to be back in this space. It's like, why would we be here if we're meant to leave the body and the mind? So do you feel that we're in a different time now that we're meant to truly embody? Because that's what I'm really feeling. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So there's different stages of materialization,
Mhm.
or what we call density.
Mhm.
So we're in a very, very physical layer of consciousness. We're in a very physical layer of reality right now.
Mhm.
And we've kind of, and not that it's a big deal, but we've taken that for granted. We think that consciousness has always just been this way, without knowing that we have been dipping like a upside down bell curve into physicality. becoming more and more physical, dipping out. So what you're specifically speaking to is when we were less autonomous and we were more in the mental, spiritual, or the etheric realm. So with each age that we become more physical, there's different gifts that each age has. So because we're on Earth, right? Earth is, if we look at alchemy, Earth would be like almost like lead, like it's like where there's the most physical expression of something. So because of that, just being on Earth, but let alone being in the deepness of an ego, the deepness of a physical body, to the point where we can experience massive illness in the physical body, you know, like that's a certain phase of reality, because reality doesn't always need to be that physical, or, you know, a body doesn't, you know, maybe on another planet have to experience illness the way that it does here. So because of that, why I'm saying all of that regarding your question about staring at the navel and calling that enlightenment or spirituality is because as we move deeper into physicality, now we have a new assignment, and that is to bring that level of awakening and enlightenment that was once only perceived and acknowledged at the mental level, but into the body, and now have the emotional body considered, acknowledged, and exalted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it seems like now, this embodiment piece. And in doing that and looking at the work that like you did with me and removing some of these energies, and the work that I'm currently now doing as well, it feels like we need to make room for that light to come in. And so as emotions become density in actual matter in the body, and these imprints and miasma and so on, do you feel that it's necessary to do extra work these days to try to remove some of this stuff? Or do you feel that this is something that people are naturally, organically going to learn how to just release in order to embody more of the light, the truth that they are?
Both. I think that it's going to pick up just how the morphic resonance field, once there's like, are you familiar with the morphic resonance field?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for your audience, the morphic resonance field is kind of like also known in the New Age as the 100th monkey effect. So it's when there's been a critical mass reached with a specific frequency or a specific thought, right? So like if we have higher vibrational thoughts, higher consciousness thoughts, and there's enough of a critical mass in that, that creates a new option, a new template for reality. And that's what the morphic resonance field is. So the morphic resonance field will make it easier for people to telepathically pick up on, oh, how to heal, or even, you know, just have gotten through the brunt of it to where there's a quickening in another person's journey because of the forerunners, such as you and myself. So it's that, and it's also people who genuinely are chest deep in the work. And those have a finer orchestra working together at you know, from a larger level, because I can say genuinely, if a person is a forerunner, I mean, they could be in hell. They're allowed to have awful, you know, like emotional truths about this journey, but there's this deeper level of just like, I wouldn't want to not be a front runner, like, because that was a part of the intention this lifetime. So it's one of those things where it may not be happy at all, but it's something where what's the opposite of it? Just sitting back and have the awakening happen without me.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Like, there's so many times I've thought, why, you know, how much harder can it get, you know? And in the last, you know, year or so for me, it was kind of like, really? Like, I want to tap out. But at the same time, I just knew that that contrast was birthing such a glorious new existence, and that was what it was all for. It was like the quickening. It was the sort of, if you're going to keep resisting this, then you're just going to feel it more. So time to just surrender into what you're being called to, which was great because, like I said, I'd always tuned in enough to know that there was nothing more important than helping other people to reach a higher place, the best that they could. And I think that that's actually the imprint of the INFJ. I think that is our main calling, is to do such a thing. And so I feel great that at least I was trying, but man, the criticism, like you were saying, what are you doing now? Now, what are you doing? Can't you get a real job? No, I can't. I just need to keep
Like,
evolving.
I'm weird, leave me alone.
I know, I'm just weird, just weird. But also that 100th monkey idea, I think that new modalities also show up, new ways to actually do things. And so where in the past to be like, no, that stuff doesn't work. No, you can't heal somebody else. Well, but we can rebalance the energy. We can, we can help to alchemize this and that. These new modalities are really exciting to me to help people along. And I don't think that it's because, by accident, because I don't think everyone has the same will to go through the quickening or to go through the catalyst. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Well, everything has to happen in waves.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be quite chaotic if everyone woke up at once and everyone like everything happens in vibration anyways. And so with vibration, it's a wave. And with that, as long as there's a past, present, and a future,
Mm-hmm.
then there will be like a head. And but that's even too simplistic because it's really a spiral.
Yeah, I like to teach it like a spiral. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So because of that, there are forerunners and then there are people behind, but there's a better term for that because they wouldn't consider themselves behind.
No,
And
and they get to draft. It's great.
yeah,
So,
and even saying behind is only useful. I find it useful, but it's only useful in a specific type of concept. When we need to take infinity and organize it
right,
into words, into structures, into
right.
reality, into making sense, then we see, oh, behind. And like, I've never used that term specifically, and I don't have anything against it. But if I did use that term, it would just be for me to teach something to have the audience on the same page as me as people.
I understand.
Sometimes we get caught up in
Mhm.
words, and I know why, because words are power. So they shape,
Yeah.
literally, language shapes our mental constructs.
Mhm.
And because language shapes our mental constructs, it's very important when we're talking about really high level, concepts like this, to be more, I guess you could say, responsible in things. For me, I've noticed that the more that I've just gone on with my YouTube channel, I'll notice that, oh, yeah, I thought they could fill in the blank here, or, oh, I should have this. So I'm always fine tuning language because of its mental constructs.
Yeah. I'm all over the place with YouTube so far. I'm just getting going, and I know how excitable I am, and I try to write down notes, but it has to flow. And so sometimes I feel like I'm saying the same thing 15 different ways, but at the same time I'm finding the voice. I'm allowing myself to do that organically, and in a way it's part of just the growth of it. I use the term grades so that it's kind of like, well, you have to kind of go through third, fourth, and fifth grade to get to sixth grade. It doesn't mean that you're better. It just means you've gone through the stages. And the third grader can't understand the sixth grader, but the sixth grader understands third, fourth, and fifth because they've been through it. So it's inclusive of that, and so, and there's no better or worse. It's just where you're at the time.
Yeah, it's where we're at, but also like the ego can use anything to make it feel better, but that's going to happen with anything. That's going to happen if somebody's like just grocery shopping, let alone like teaching. So because of that, it's really important for me to talk about concepts
Mhm.
that usually get a little too that they don't get said enough because they can sound egoic to person
Mhm.
going through it. But my audience just wants to know what the hell is going on. They're not trying to have a
Yep.
superiority concept.
Yep.
So
Yep.
because of that, I tell the things, okay, I don't say this, but I'm giving you an example. I'm like, okay, so we're in fifth grade going to sixth grade, blah, blah. Now these are the third graders. And like, and it's not to put anyone
Oh,
down.
no,
Because
no.
The
Yeah.
fifth graders really need to know what the heck is going on because it's
Yeah.
crucial for their stage to sixth grade.
Right.
So I have to say things that might come off as spiritually superior, but they're not at all. They're for
Yeah.
clarity, and they're actually very necessary.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. And sometimes I find trying to just simplify concepts, to just kind of almost whitewash them a little bit, just to say, look, here's what's going on. We're moving from here to here. This is the age that we're moving into. Here's the basics. We're from this to that. We're going in a spiral. We're dealing with polarities. We're trying to collapse the duality and we move out of separation consciousness. This is how we do it from the masculine. Here's how we do it from the feminine. That's really like my little nut, right? It's in there. And I have a particular affinity for people that have just been thrust into awakenings, such as, Kundalini, like spontaneous Kundalini experiences. And they have these energies, or the twin flame initiation, or, maybe some kind of plant medicine that threw them into, something just really intense, and knocking down those energies and helping them to understand what's the path. Like, what am I really doing? What's going on? What was I just initiated into? And why did I do that breath work? you know? So in that all being said, I would like to bring this conversation to that realm a little bit, just for this audience that I'm starting to grow. So moving from this separation consciousness of duality and polarities and all of the hermetic principles of pluses and minuses in every direction, how do you see this moving into a unity Christ consciousness as a feasibility in this lifetime, given this new age that we're moving into? Can you kind of give an overview of what that new age is, and if this is an attainable goal right now overall?
Yeah. And I know that every age thinks it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like really every generation is like, this is the end of times. But it's funny because actually Steiner made his teachings for now.
Mhm. So did
Um,
Jesus, by the way. So did Jesus. He knew it was coming. Go ahead.
well, I mean, yeah, Christ consciousness
Right.
returning.
Right.
Yeah. So everything, I'm not trying to sound like I've got, like an importance around my generation. It just is what it is. This is a specific importance in this age.
Mhm.
And it's, what the true esoteric meaning behind Revelations was about, which is God consciousness, unity consciousness.
Mhm.
So Revelations was about a God consciousness awakening. How it got distorted into that is how everything always gets distorted for control. So because of that, we're literally in an age where it's about unity consciousness.
Mhm.
So it's more like if there was a natural, just like if there was no polarity, if there was no inflammation, if there wasn't like high tension conflict, what we would see is that a person would naturally start to evolve their consciousness into unity consciousness, enlightenment. They're special, but at the same time, they're completely like natural.
Natural.
It's
Yeah,
just
that's the
like a
word.
reducing of
Yep.
the ego,
Yep.
not like an accumulation. And so
Mhm.
because of that, it takes more effort to maintain
Mhm.
not going into unity consciousness, to answer your
Oh,
question.
I love that.
And because of that, it takes like a lot of conflict and inflammation and polarization
Mhm.
to stop the
Yep.
natural
To keep
stream.
you down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, because one of the things that I'm feeling, and part of the question I had before about, learning the concepts, I personally found them super helpful, but as soon as I reached that certain point, it was like, it's time to unbecome. It's time to now let it all go and to come to know from a different place. And now I wake up every single night for an hour to 2 hours at night, and I'm just flooded with imagery and downloads of a lot of the things that I learned, but suddenly pieced together into, full understanding and knowing. And it's just like, I get so excited. I just want to like crawl out of bed and start, turn on the video just to capture it, not to be seen so much, but just to get it out. It's like it needs to be spoken, and I'm just supposed to be the mouthpiece. It's incredible. And so that unbecoming is actually feeling even more in a different way. And so teaching to shed the what we think we know of the ego and the identities and the all of that seems to be the work. What do you think?
Yes, yeah. A reducing, absolutely. And in alchemy, there's different stages and there's different systems, but the most agreed upon classical system, at least in this age, is the 7 stages of alchemy. All of those stages are just entering the void, but
Mhm,
they're doing so in a certain element. So for instance, the first stage would be, as you were talking about, like, yeah, like having these downloads come. How do they come? Well, because you're releasing the old, you're
mhm,
releasing the programming, the conditioning, whatever is not inherently you. And
mhm,
because of that, now you're getting these downloads, but they're your natural self as you
mhm,
embody your higher self.
mhm,
And so back to the first stage, it's reduction by fire. But then the second stage is reduction by air,
mhm,
by
mhm.
water, and then reduction by air, and then reduction by earth, and then consecration. So I said at one of my recent live events, somebody asked me about like the void and when it enters, and I'm like, the whole thing's the void. It's void, 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 consecrate, aka union, void, void, consecrate. So it's a constant unbecoming,
Yep,
evolving, and then a reunification,
yep,
but that reunification is more organized when
yep,
it does come together.
yep. And it feels peaceful. It feels trusting, and yeah, it feels there's a trust to it versus a needing to uphold it and keep it in form. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Informed, I guess, informed.
Informed, yeah.
So, so I would love to, so I've got a couple more few topics that I want to make sure that we cover.
Yeah.
So you did a video on Heros Gamos, and I just love working with polarity and collapsing polarity, or really kind of reintegrating the feminine and the masculine principles within in order to bring us more into this unity, because I really believe that that emotional mental dance is such a part of it. Can you share just briefly about what this is and this topic and reaching this balance? Would you say that this is our pathway right now in terms of reaching that unity?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually why I came in with the specific profile. I opted into this lifetime with. It's for Eros Gamos.
That you mean the INFJ thing? Because I'll tell you,
That my own personal
and
struggles,
you're, yeah,
my dharma,
yep,
my
yeah,
karma, my dharma, all of it
I
is for
couldn't agree more.
this.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's the most important thing.
Mhm,
And the unification of in that takes place with Eros Gamos is at the highest note, because it can mean several different things and they're all true. But like if we take this concept of Eros Gamos to its most esoteric, most core meaning, it is the graduation from a human into their next evolutionary celestial phase as an angelic being in the angelic hierarchy. Now, that angelic hierarchy doesn't necessarily need to mean a specific system like how Steiner or Rosicrucians have the celestial angelic hierarchy. It could mean that, but I'm talking about an angelic hierarchy more so just like when we graduate to our next evolutionary form.
mhm. And that would be, so I know that there's dimensions, which are levels of awareness, and then there's densities, which is actual form, correct?
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
so my understanding is we're moving from a third density to a fourth density being, which is where we are centered at the heart, centered in the heart center, I should say, versus the lower 3 chakras. Would you agree with this in terms of like kind of this space and time that we're in moving into fourth density?
I'd say we're already in fourth density. The funny thing is that there's these two dominant and yet like not there's these two dominant thoughts, one that we're moving into fourth density and one that we're moving into fifth density. Now, I could do a video on this and I've done videos on it, but I don't actually care. I'm
Yeah.
not the density
It doesn't
police,
really
like
matter at
I'm
the end
not
of the
gonna be like,
day.
right.
Yeah,
But
I
I
agree.
just want to say, like, the reason why I see it and I experience it and I'm sticking to it just being fifth density
Uh-huh.
is because one, where the fourth density concept came from we're moving into that, is the law of one material,
Love
which
one.
I have a lot of respect for and I've learned so much from. It's one of the OGs, right? It's
Mhm.
New
Yep,
Age.
totally.
But even they were like talking and being like to I forget who, if it was Dawn or Carla, transmitting that information. They were like, could you always monitor the numbers that we are communicating to you, because they're not a part of our memory complex? So they basically said, now I'll just serify it. They said, yeah, we don't do numbers. So when we're doing numbers, we're doing that because like
Because
you're
that's what you
asking
need. Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. Because
So
that's your
that's
language.
my one little, that's
Yeah,
just my one little thing where it's like, I'm not going to get caught up on
yeah.
their number system because they straight up said they don't have a number system.
And it's funny too, because some of the other studies that I'm looking at now with 12 strand DNA versus the 10, it's a little different. I don't know if you have a video on that. We'll have to talk about that. But that we are moving into fifth density. It's another frame looking at it the same way. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it really doesn't. Like you said, but our bodies are changing from a carbon base more into a crystalline and then lighter and lighter and lighter is what's happening, correct?
Yeah, I do want to say it may matter. When I get certain downloads, that's the time for a message. A lot of times
Mhm.
people just think that they're not psychic or they're not tapped in,
Mhm.
and they may not be.
Right.
But a lot of the times what they define as it is like knowing every single thing and it never changes. And if it's not that, then they're like they don't have any activated centers, and
Right.
that's a tall order. That's a
Right.
lot to expect.
Yeah.
So I get things that come through that matter when they matter. And if they don't before they don't, then that just meant that it wasn't time for it to matter. So I just want to throw that out there in case one day it really matters if it's fourth or fifth
Sure.
density.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree. And religion, I'm just going to put that word out there.
Religion.
Religion. So I've never been religious. I was brought up, I did go to Catholic school for a while. It was the better school in town. I ate the wafers, but I didn't, have to do all the things. I even sang in the choir because I liked singing. But I've never subscribed to any specific religion. I looked into certain things. I do think Jesus is a badass. I think I love his teachings and the Essenes and all of that. Buddhism, the same. I've gotten a bit out of Hinduism. In terms of the dogma, however, of religion and it being from the past and from these avatars of the time, always being born around an avatar, each religion or set. Um, how do you feel that fits in today in this? It almost feels like we're deconstructing a lot of that. This new age or new cage movement kind of kicked in to kind of almost pull the stragglers over and lose them in rainbows and unicorns for a while in the false thing. What do you feel is is the shift in terms of spirituality in general, taking ownership and taking personal responsibility for our own journeys versus handing it over to a specific dogma or religion as in the past? That may not be a clear question, but what are your thoughts?
It's understood. Religion, we need to stop protecting religion. It's trying to rebrand, and it's always going to, which is what you beautifully captured in New Age, New Cage. So that's religion. It's not gonna, it's
Mhm.
like rearranging chairs on,
Yeah.
like in the living room that's on fire. Like it's having a new thing that is still just the same exact structure, the same exact setup
Mhm.
is is what has enslaved human consciousness.
Mhm.
And I'm using those words very yeah, with intention,
Oh,
because it's the truth. And sometimes we, we're inundated with so much information. So things get in, things come out, things integrate, things don't, they dissolve, all that stuff. But when it comes to religion specifically, religion itself gets a glow up a lot, even in the spiritual community, even when it does not need to be protected. It does not need to be justified.
Mhm.
It still gets this glow up, this, well, no, it really meant this. This is the true origins. We just need to go back to the true origins. That is not true. The true origins of
Right.
religion was never to unify. That's what people say when we take down religar, the Latin term. Just straight up what they meant when they created the term religion was to bind together, to
Mhm.
tie, which meant to unify. And that's not true. It meant religion, the intent for that word, right? How it's talking about language being powerful, language being mental constructs. It was not to unify. Religion means actually to hold back, to retard, meaning to
Mm.
do again.
Mm.
And that's exactly what the system is. And that's why I'm so serious about this, that I broke down etymology just to be very clear, because there's a lot of information now coming to give a rebranding glow up to religion.
Oof.
Does that mean that spirituality is better than religion? Well, it depends, because I'm not saying that religion is evil because I'm mad at religion. I'm saying it because objectively we need to understand these things. If we don't come to a certain level of discernment, understanding,
Mhm.
awareness, then we're going to repeat, redo,
Right.
go back, just like how it's that term.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I feel like ultimately the issue was putting the locus of our source outside of us, period.
Yes.
And spirituality is just coming to understand the unseen world, in which case learning everything that you have on your channel is imperative to some degree. I mean, I binged you, like probably took me at the time that I found you, it was probably not anywhere near what you have now, but yeah, probably within a day, I just was like, love this, and filled in a bunch of pieces that I never learned in religion whatsoever. You know, the bits that I had put at me, and that there's such a righteousness in it. It's just, this is it. This is the word. This is it. It's written. And it's like, well, I can write something down too. let me write, let me write my own. So what do you think it would be one of the main blocks then to people getting out of that and moving into something, you know, how do you guide someone to move out of putting the locus from out here back into here?
Gnosis. They have to have their own direct experience. They need more than that, because a person can have their own direct experience and still be programmed, still have a bunch of their own personal habits
Mhm.
or identity with their more conditioned self, the one that seeks approval, seeks group, seeks safety in the herds. Had so many different things are going on. So it's not just good enough to have direct experience, but it's being able to get to a certain level of awareness.
Mhm.
And when I say awareness, that also includes healing, but get to a certain level of awareness so that we take the handrails off.
Yeah.
Because if a person does not feel safe, in mysticism, we call them buffers, literally buffers
Mhm. Yeah.
that keep that thing away from that thing because we can't handle it.
Mhm.
So the the work is really becoming aware of the buffers. Why are they there? What are they keeping us safe from? What is too much to handle? That because we have so many different train tracks in our reality, in our
Mhm.
mind. And those train tracks are just different beliefs and different parts of us, and different literally personalities within us, and things that were too stressful, and it causes too much tension and uncomfortableness
Yep.
to actually get those to meet and merge, aka integration,
Yeah.
which is why healing is integration. It's literally merging all of the split and fragmented parts of the psyche that are just spread thin, going in every direction,
Yeah.
causing the being to be catabolized or go through entropy. So
Mhm.
because of that, a person has to understand what their handrails are or buffers, why they're there.
Mm-hmm.
And then first of all, that does a lot, because if a person can even face that, that's enough truth to help carry the rest of the way of, okay, I'm going to go through a process of removing those. And so how that would look in real life is a person maybe saying, you know what, I got into a hive mind. I
Mm-hmm.
got into a group and it felt really good because it had some truth in it and it felt like it was a positive movement, and it felt like, but maybe it's tapped out. Maybe it served its purpose. Maybe it was positive and it was helpful, but only for me to get to the next stage. When a person is that honest with themselves
Mm-hmm.
about specific things that are showing up in their internal and external world, that's going to remove enough buffers eventually for people to start becoming sovereign. Sovereignty, to answer your question,
Yeah.
sovereignty is how we now feel comfortable enough positioning ourselves with the unknown, or the microcosm lining up with the macrocosm, rather than just recycling the same system of needing
Mm-hmm.
needing a parental priestly caste there,
Mm-hmm.
because that will always end up in slavery. It's never going to be, whenever there's certain laws in this reality, and there is never a time when a being is not in their sovereignty that will actually be a positive external mirror. It will be
Mm-hmm.
an external mirror of them lacking their sovereignty.
Yeah.
So at that point, it becomes, does a person want to be a part of a group and have a priestly caste harvest them?
Right. Harvest. Yikes. Yeah. Yeah. It is a disintegration, and it's just the opposite. I liken this even just to belief systems in general. Part of what I do is dismantling belief systems and taking them down, which is like an operating system. It's a paradigm. It's how we see things. It's how we, decide. And it's based on all kinds of faulty stuff from all walks, all times of our life. It's fascinating. And that to me are like some of these bumpers, or I'm picturing the little bumpers in bowling, that come up
Yeah,
and keep
that's a
going out of the
perfect
line.
illustration.
Yeah. So fascinating. And one of the last things I want to talk about, again, I do talk a lot about just kind of stepping up, slowly stepping up these levels. Like, what am I reaching for next? Where do I feel I'm stuck, or where do I feel that I'm at in terms of, a paradigm, and how do I jump up? And so you talk a little bit about paradigm. I think it's blindness or allegiance or both, how we kind of get stuck in these bandwidths because we're not able yet to see, or we're not willing, or we have these systems and bumpers that are keeping us in that line. Can you speak to that a little bit, and what your tips would be to reaching for that next one and what needs to be done?
We call things utopia when they're too far out of reach of our paradigm.
Mhm.
So maybe somewhere a new ager is actually disembodied, disconnected, avoidant, and spiritual bypassing, and they're talking about the new earth from a utopian, really escapism version.
Mhm.
But that's not the whole representative of this concept of a new earth. And so the more that we look at the new earth from only it being some sort of like new age escapism, bypassing philosophy of new religion of utopia,
Mhm.
we're going to miss the mark. We're
Mhm.
going to be really clever about the fact that some people are in clear escapism
Mhm.
while missing the larger point, which is that it's actually a highly unhealthy enslaved mind that cannot perceive a healthy system and paradigm,
Mhm.
because the neocortex can foresee.
Mhm.
So the neocortex is the higher order thinking. It's creative.
Mhm.
If we can't get there to go, I don't see this new paradigm, but I can tell you one thing, and that's, I don't think we should protect and justify the suffering level here. So anything that becomes more empowered, more conscious of a collective has to be the progression of whatever we're calling a new earth. And so when we don't have that ability to connect with or sense a new earth, that's called paradigm blindness.
Mhm.
Paradigm blindness is, once again, a sign that a person's just not operating on full cylinders from their higher order
Higher mind.
state of, yeah.
Yeah.
So because of that, healing is so important, because healing will actually help a person. They
Mhm.
don't have to picture it, but like to understand, to bring it more pragmatic and more reality to the
Mhm.
fact that a healthier paradigm of reality can happen. Not only can it happen, it's why so many of us incarnated in this time.
Mhm.
It can and it will happen.
Mhm.
So the paradigm blindness is a very great concept of explaining what happens when a person just can't access that. And then the pitfall of that might be to now throw it all into an escapism category.
Hmm. Yeah. And this is, I think, where we are so pulled. Oh my gosh. Like, talk about the powers that were, as you put it, that have been, keeping us completely separated. I say us. I don't want to, I don't even want to say us. I don't want to be included in that. But alcohol, the music industry, like all of it, all of the things that are the addictions, there's this missing piece in us, I think, that's calling us home, if you will, or back to wholeness. I think it has a really deep gravity to it in a way, or levity is probably the better word. But there's all this stuff that's just being thrown at us to keep us in these lower states, I guess you could say. But what I think is fascinating too, and I'd learned this, I think it was from Dr. Hawkins, where he talks about that when you get to a certain level, the etheric brain is basically born. You're spiritualized in a way. Before that, you're still in the animal form. I mean, you're still just totally working at that level. And since I work with those scales a lot, if you're finding yourself in anger and pride and shame and so on, and you haven't reached that fulcrum yet, that neocortex, that etheric brain is not online yet. And so there is a blindness there. You can't see what you can't see. And it's not meant to sound elitist or in any way putting anybody down. It's just the reality of where we're stuck and where they're trying to keep us stuck. Would you agree that that's what they're trying to do right now?
Yes,
Is
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's his scale is what I based the title of my avatar level consciousness video on. Because I was like, how ego is habituation at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So the habitualness of certain terms might lose the ability to connect with them deeper, to create true gnosis with them. So I like to shift up the teachings
Mhm.
in a way so that they can still be fresh and not habitualized to the
Agreed.
ego. And
Agreed.
so avatar level consciousness is another way of saying enlightenment.
Mhm. Mhm.
And avatar level consciousness came from Hawkins' work
Right.
when he was, and the funny thing is, before I had become aware and dive deep into Hawkins' work, I was already getting something very similar. I didn't know that he had it all calibrated and scaled out. I forget the percentages, but he said that like one person at avatar consciousness is equivalent, and there was just some ridiculous
Counterbalances. Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
Yeah, they counterbalanced a whole bunch. I got about 10,000 more people they counterbalanced than what he had calibrated.
Mhm.
But still, that's just interesting how, if it's a good, if it's a true and good thought, it will carry on in
Yeah.
different people.
Yeah. Well, and I believe that also in just within ourselves, as we reach for these higher states and collapse our own inner duality from the sense of identities and the density of that and belief systems that aren't serving us anymore. And we can feel that. We feel the contrast. As we collapse that, we're lifting ourselves, but we're also lifting all, because we are all, in the same soup here. And I think that that's so super powerful, and that there's a momentum that's happening around that. I have a lot of hope, actually, in that. And I feel, grateful to be a part of it, and to be, in speaking with you here, and the work that we're doing. I mean, you were just such a thought leader, and I just love how you put pieces together. Again, for such a similar wiring of mind, but also I'm trying to simplify and just get my hands in there and help people to start on their path. It's kind of like getting them going, removing some of it, and like, go, 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 you got it, like you got it, you got it. It's most incredibly rewarding kind of work. And I really love that I can rest upon your teachings to say, go learn from her. She's the master in these esoteric things, and I don't have to go there. So thank you so much for that work. It's so,
I
so
really
appreciated.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And so you do believe that we are like, there's true enlightenment avatar level, but there's also this beautiful space of this heart-centered unity, understanding that I believe is, so accessible now. Do you agree with that as well? That that's
They're
accessible?
one and the same.
Hmm? One and the
They're
same.
one and the same.
Oh, you think? Oh, wow. I love that.
Having heart-centered consciousness
Mhm.
is what we call enlightenment, is what can be calibrated as what Hawkins called avatar level consciousness. Because, I mean, it's funny now, we see avatars and we think of something completely AI, but avatars
Mhm.
are all of the divine beings that we revere, even
Mhm.
in religion, but even if we're not religious, like
Mhm.
Yeshua, Krishna,
Yep.
Buddha, those are avatars.
Yep.
All of them open heart center,
Mhm.
awakened heart center.
Yep.
So in true enlightenment, it is the heart center and beyond,
Yep.
but it can't bypass the heart
Oh,
center.
yeah. I
That
believe
would
it
be like a
starts there.
false spiritual ego.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct. And then there's also that void, that sort of bypassing, just denying the whole body and the mind and going straight into, just enlightened, bliss out states, and then total non-duality without the heart, without being embodied. And that just seems like not a place I would want to want to aim
I
for.
call them peak experiences.
Yeah.
Peak experiences typically don't integrate. I've had peak experiences before that are life-changing and that have integrated, but it took a while for them to
Mhm.
integrate.
Right.
But peak experiences, I mean, it kind of depends on the person, but they typically don't
Mhm.
integrate. But yeah, that's definitely the state that you're talking about, when it might even be involved with the heart. The heart might get in on why it feels so ecstatic in it, but
Mhm.
it's a peak, meaning because it wasn't stabilized later. It wasn't
Mhm.
actually incorporated into
Mhm.
the person's embodiment or worldview or, psyche, body, mind,
Right.
to actually call it something that is more stable. And
Yeah.
so what we're seeing now is actually us going through a process of stabilizing
Mhm.
that awakening.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's beautiful. And it seems to be happening more and more, not only spontaneously with people, but just gradually, naturally. And then there's others that are just choosing the other path, so without going into any of that. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this, just to stay on time with you. But do you have any events or things that are coming up? Are you still working with people individually? What are you up to in that sense?
Yeah, so for now, I'm still working with people. I have changed my schedule around some, so it's not as much, but that's just to allocate to the other projects that I have.
Mhm.
I do have a Los Angeles in-person soul gathering coming up.
Wonderful.
Um, I don't have the dates for that yet, though, but yeah, we'll be in Los Angeles. And if anyone's interested in that, they can definitely check out my website, thealchemist.community, or sign up for my newsletter at thealchemist.community.
Great. And your YouTube, of course, is The Alchemist, is what you're known as. And I want to again thank you so much for this and so much for helping me to push that last phase, at least the phase for now. I don't think there ever is a last phase, but the big one, I should say, to get to this side of things. And I hope again to be able to work with you and see you in person sometime soon. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing and all the light that you're sharing.
Yeah, it's absolutely it's my joy. It's my joy. It's my calling. All right. Thank you, Sarah. I'll turn off the recording now.